Hey everybody, welcome back to the NerdNest. I'm Bill Fairchild, and this is my channel all about the video game industry. And today I've got 2 Valve stories, 3 Microsoft stories, and a PlayStation story. We do not have time to screw around here, so let's jump right in. And I want to start off with this article that I found over at XDA about the Game Developers Conference. Every year at GDC, there's a survey that goes out, and they ask all the developers a ton of questions about what they're working on, what platforms they're supporting, what kind of experiences they are having in the industry, so that they can have what they call the State of the Industry report. And that State of the Industry report just came out, and XDA was talking about it, and I found this article, and in it, it says, in 2026, the GDC State of the Industry report shows that 40% of developers are actively optimizing for Steam Deck. This is tying up the PS5 as the second highest platform of interest. So when you look at what developers are working on, they are focusing on number 1, the PS5. That's their number 1 platform of interest, according to what I'm reading here. The second biggest platform of interest is Steam Deck, which is wild to me because as of, I'm going to say sometime last year, the last numbers that we saw was that the Steam Deck sold roughly 5 million units. Now, I'm sure that has grown since then, but when you compare that to how many units the Xbox sold, how many units the Nintendo Switch sold, how many units the PS5 sold, 5 million units, even if we double it to 10, is a minuscule amount of hardware. That's very little hardware that has been pushed out there. So why is it that so many developers are focusing on it? I think that there's a couple of reasons, and it's the same stuff that I've talked about for 4 years at this point. Part of it is the Steam Verified program, which we'll talk about that in a second. But a lot of people are focusing on it because if they focus on the Steam Deck, they get other gains as well. Not only does their game then work on the Steam Deck and they get the verified checkmark, which we'll talk about in a second, but that means the games are also going to run better on all of the other PCs that are out there. PCs are the biggest part of the industry. Way more people are playing games on PC than do on console. Not that that really matters because the consoles definitely hold their own when it comes to how many people are playing there, but a lot more people are playing games on PC. And one of the issues when it comes to developing your game and focusing on PC is that there are so many different hardware configurations out there. It makes it more difficult to optimize your game. By giving developers a set standard, something to aim for, it makes it almost like it turns PC into a console. Here's what they said on the article. It says Valve didn't just sell millions of Steam Deck. They actually created a fixed hardware target in the world of infinite PC configurations. It felt like as a result, the Steam Deck killed the unoptimized PC port era by making it financially impossible for a developer to ignore the platform that now rivals the console market engagement. The Steam Deck and its successor have fundamentally engineered the PC gaming industry by forcing developers to treat handheld first as a priority optimization target. This is something I've been saying for years. By giving the developers a target to aim for and having that target be low, that means every single person out there that runs games on a PC, pretty much no matter what specs you're running, you're going to see a benefit by developers aiming at these lower spec systems like handhelds like the Steam Deck. And then they went on to say, it feels like recently the Steam Deck Verified badge has become the new gold standard. In 2026, the Verified badge that you see on a lot of Steam games storefronts is more than just a compatibility check. It's a marketing powerhouse. Okay, so I will say this. I have been wildly critical of Valve's Steam Deck verification badge. There's quite often you will see games that do not run at all and they will be verified, and that doesn't make any sense why they would. Also, very often you will see games that are listed as unsupported, but then when you play them, they work just fine on the Steam Deck. So this whole thing about it being a compatibility check, I know that that's what it's supposed to be. I don't think that that's what it is. However, that last thing that they said in that sentence, it's a marketing powerhouse. I 100% agree with that. Developers want their game to have that check mark. When you look at Steam as a whole, there's so many games on Steam, it's hard to separate yourself from all of the other games. By getting that check mark, essentially you end up, the publisher, you end up in a smaller subsection of Steam, the games that are great on deck, essentially. And this means that you are now a bigger fish in a smaller pond, or I guess a better analogy would be you're the same size fish, but now you're in a much smaller pond, which gives you a better chance of succeeding. So yes, absolutely, it is a marketing powerhouse. I still think that there's a lot that Valve could do if they want to make the verified program work better than it does. And there's rumors that they are actually working on things like that, like the rumored ability for them to predict what frames per second you would get on the hardware that you are looking at the game on. That would be absolutely huge. And if you want to know more about that, I'm going to leave a video that I made about it linked down below. Let's move on and see what else they said here. They went on to say, it feels like with the implementation of widespread adoption of Steam Deck, there's also been a slight death of the ultra 4K mindset. For years, PC gaming felt like an arms race towards 4K. However, the Steam Deck forced a bit more of a race to the bottom in a good way. Thanks to an 800p resolution, as a result, developers are now building low and medium presets that actually look good and scaling down. We are seeing a return to 720p, 800p optimization where assets are designed to scale rather than just being shrunk by an algorithm. This is really good news because when you look at consoles versus PC, quite often what you would find is the consoles, they'll have a lot more optimization because the developers know that storage is limited on those devices. Where on PC, I think oftentimes developers just assume that everybody who has a PC has a giant 4, 5, 12 terabyte hard drive in there. And so they can have a game that's 200 gigabytes to download. And then there's a 300 gigabyte patch on day one. And like, they don't seem to care on PC about storage sizes. Well, in the 4 years since the Steam Deck has come out, I think that we have seen some shrinking of some game sizes. The games have been getting a little bit smaller. Why? Because instead of forcing every single person who downloads a game to download the full res textures, they leave those full res textures as optional free DLC that you can then download separately. So you get the main game, and then you're like, if you're playing on a beefy system, you can download those big textures. So because we are now essentially been given a target for developers to aim at, 800p, well, then they can aim for that and then give us more if we want more. And I think that's better than what we've seen in the past, where they're just like, this is the results, this is the files that you're getting. And if it runs like crap on your low spec system, that's really your problem and not ours. So I like the idea that the Steam Deck is not forcing, but encouraging developers to target lower spec systems. And I would also argue that this did not start with the Steam Deck. It also started with Nintendo. Nintendo had the Switch. If the Switch wasn't super popular, I think a lot of people, or when I say people, I mean developers in this case, I think a lot of developers and publishers would have looked at that and said, well, we don't really care about that. It's not super popular. But now that it's popular, well, it's important to target that because that's a lot of wallets that they can reach into if they target that system. And because it's so low power, then we see benefits everywhere else. Essentially, when publishers aim for low spec systems and hit them, everyone all the way across, every single gamer, no matter if you're running on a Steam Deck or if you're running on the latest 5090, you're going to see benefits from that. Next up, we've got an update that I think tells us that we might be getting a Steam controller before the Steam Machine and the Steam Frame come out. I've made a video begging Valve to release the controller now. I'm going to leave that linked down below if you want to check that out. But let's talk about the new evidence that suggests that maybe Valve is actually listening to what everybody's saying. Here's the post from Brad. He said, Valve has secretly uploaded a Steam controller unboxing video, unwatchable right now. I think we will see its launch very soon. And if you look at the image that he uploaded, there is a file that Valve uploaded called Steam Controller Unboxing 2026. Essentially, Valve made their own unboxing video. They uploaded it to Steam. SteamDB is transparent, so when things get uploaded there, people can start seeing all of the things that are going on in the background. Currently, if you download the file, it's just like a black video. So what basically I think is happening here is they have uploaded like a placeholder video just to get the database ready so that when they hit the go button, it'll then link the actual video that they want to show to this post, and then people will be able to see it. If they are posting a video, or at least uploading a placeholder video for an unboxing of the Steam controller, that tells me that we are right around the corner from when they're going to publish the actual store so that we can click on that buy button and start, refreshing as Steam inevitably crashes under the weight of everybody trying to order these things all at once. I recently put out a video where I talked specifically about like how many of these Steam controllers have been shipped in. Again, another leak from Sadly It's Bradley. If you want to know more about that, check out the link in the description down below the like button. But I think we are right on the precipice. I think any minute now we're going to see the Steam controller launch. Now, if you notice, there's nothing in here about the unboxing of the Steam machine or the Steam frame. Why would Valve ship the Steam controller by itself without those other things? I'm sure that they would prefer to ship them all together. I'm sure that they would prefer all of them to be released at the same time. But both the Steam machine and the Steam frame have storage and have RAM. Two things that are currently in very, very high demand thanks to AI nonsense. And because of that, they've had to, I'm going to say delay in quotes. And I've got a t-shirt, by the way, if you want to pick up a t-shirt that has something to do with the Steam machine delay, link down below that you can check out. But they've delayed the Steam machine and the Steam frame. They still say it's going to come out in 2026. We really don't know when in 2026. But the one thing that I think that they don't need to delay is the Steam controller. The Steam controller doesn't have RAM. It doesn't have storage. And because of that, they can ship it right now. And maybe that's what they're thinking about doing. And the fact that we saw a post of an unboxing video of the Steam controller, but not an unboxing video of the frame and not an unboxing video of the machine, I think that tells us that we're going to be getting our Steam controllers sooner rather than later. Next up, I've got a trio of Microsoft related stories, starting with some Helix news. If you guys don't know, Project Helix is Microsoft's next console. And by console, what I mean is it's also a PC at the same time, which is kind of a weird thing. Microsoft has been moving towards this hybrid nature where basically their next Xbox is going to be a Windows PC, and it's going to be a Windows PC running the new Xbox mode, which I've been messing around with for the past few days since it came out. It's okay, but I like SteamOS a whole lot better, and I'm 99.9% sure that I'm going to switch back. But that's not what this is about. This is about Project Helix. And it comes from this article over at Tech Power Up, where it says that Microsoft's Xbox Project Helix console APU will feature no customization at all, making it basically a bog standard PC, albeit a decently powerful one at that. And that's pretty much what this whole thing says. It doesn't say much of anything else. But the source for this is Kepler L2, who is somewhat of a reliable leaker. But basically, they're saying that they're just going to be getting like off-the-shelf parts, throwing them into this PC, calling it Project Helix, shipping it out the door with Windows defaulting with Xbox mode on. And that's what Project Helix is going to be, which is a very big departure from what we've ever seen before in the console space. When you look at what Valve is doing with the Steam machine and what Microsoft is doing with Project Helix, it's like they are converging on the same idea in the same location, but they're coming at it from two different spectrums, or two different ends of the spectrum, where Steam and Valve, they're coming to it from the PC perspective, and Microsoft is coming from the console perspective, and they're landing on this weird hybrid in the middle. So really, the Xbox is competing directly with the Steam machine and vice versa. The big difference between them is A, power, and B, which operating system are you running? And when it comes to power, it's surprising that Microsoft is using just standard off-the-shelf parts, because up until now, they've always partnered with somebody to make parts specifically for their devices. There's an advantage to having specific parts custom made for your device, but there's also a disadvantage. The advantage is you usually get really good optimization. You usually get really good power. It makes it easy for devs to target what they're targeting. That's a good thing. The disadvantage to having a custom APU is that you have to order a certain number of them. And if you don't order enough, then a lot of times these companies will say, well, we're not going to sell them to you. For example, and this is just throwing numbers out into the ether, let's say that Microsoft wanted to get a certain APU made. They go to AMD. AMD says, you have to order 10 million or we're not doing it. Microsoft says, well, I don't know if we can sell 10 million, so maybe we shouldn't order it. And that's what makes me think that it makes sense for them to just do off-the-shelf parts, because if they have off-the-shelf parts in a device like this, it's still a known standard. All of the devs and publishers, they're going to be able to look at this and they'll say, well, we know that every single Project Helix has this hardware in it, so we can target that hardware when we make our game. If you look at Steam, on the other hand, you have the same thing. You have this known hardware spec that devs can then target. So essentially, the Steam machine is going to be the low spec version. The Windows Project Helix is going to be the high spec version. And probably devs are going to target both specifically. It's so that the game auto detects what system you're running on, a Steam machine or a Project Helix, and it selects the appropriate settings, and then you're off to the races. You don't really have to jump through any hoops to get your games running. This is the hybridization of the console and PC that I think sounds freaking awesome, and I'm glad that Microsoft is doing this, and I'm glad that Valve is doing this. However, I then saw this article from WCCF Tech. Basically, they were quoting friend of the show Tom from Moore's Law is Dead. He's been on the podcast once. And here's what Tom had to say. He said, Project Helix is basically a high-end PC, so even using the same silicon as AMD's 70 or maybe 80s class RDNA 5 GPUs is. It isn't an ultra-level PC hardware, but it's still far more powerful than consoles usually have. It will have the biggest APU in console history. So that sentence right there kind of stops me in my tracks for a second, because we've got Kepler L2 saying it's going to be off the shelf. And then Moore's Law is Dead is saying that this is going to be the biggest APU in console history. Now, does that mean that it's a custom APU and Kepler L2 is wrong? Or is he just saying that when you compare the APU that's going to go into Project Helix, whether it's off the shelf or custom, it doesn't matter, it's a bigger APU than anything that we've seen any other time? And I think that that's probably what we're looking at here. It's still not custom, but I don't know. Maybe you should check out Moore's Law is Dead and ask him what he thinks about this. I didn't get a chance to talk to him before I posted this. Anyway, so then he goes on to say, so if Project Helix has a PC mode, which I'm sure it does, it could become a similarly disruptive product into the mid to high-end pre-builds as Apple's MacBook Neo has been to cheap laptops. Yes, it is expensive for a console, but guys, even if it's $1,200, it's like a $2,000 to $3,000 gaming PC. That's disruptive. And that's the thing that I think a lot of people are forgetting when they talk about Project Helix, is when we talk about how much this thing is going to cost, and we say words like $1,000 or $1,200. What people aren't realizing is that for that $1,000 or $1,200 that you're spending on maybe Project Helix, you're getting a much more powerful computer than you would be able to otherwise. And speaking of disruptive, you know how when you're playing a game And then suddenly you get this little frame hitch where you're turning the camera or something and the game stutters for like just a microsecond and then goes back to normal. It's really annoying, right? It disrupts your gameplay. Well, the reason that happens is because your game is compiling shaders. Think, and I'm simplifying here, so I'm not using the exact correct terminology, but this is just to make it really easy to understand. Think of a shader as like a little computer program that has to run at a certain time. When something is about to happen on the screen, that little computer program called the shader runs. It gives the result back to the game. The game then displays whatever it is that it was trying to display, and then you can continue doing what you're doing. Well, if your computer is already busy doing a bunch of stuff, and then it suddenly has to compile that shader in real time, that's when you start to see that shader stuttering. So if you can compile all of those shaders ahead of time so that you know, okay, we already have all of the answers that we need to make this thing show up on this particular hardware. We've got all the answers, just plug those answers in when the game asks for that shader to be compiled. Well, then you are going to see less of those micro stutters. A perfect example would be at the Steam Deck launch, Elden Ring. The Steam Deck was like the best place to play Elden Ring. Why? Because it had shader compilation happening outside of the game by Valve, targeting the Steam Deck specifically. So it had all of the answers, and then as soon as it needed to display something, there was no shader compilation that had to happen in real time. And that's something that happens through SteamOS automatically, and it's freaking amazing. That's why when you start a game, sometimes it says compiling shaders, and then you have to wait at the beginning. But all that waiting at the beginning pays off, because then during gameplay, you don't get those micro stutters. Well, Microsoft is essentially copying this system, and I'm glad that they are. This is why competition exists, to force companies to improve things. Microsoft announced a while back that they were going to be doing advanced shader delivery in DirectX 12. And according to this article that is over at WCCF Tech, they found a tweet that the UE5 implementation of the new DirectX advanced shader delivery is in progress. So now we are going to start seeing the results of Microsoft trying to copy what Valve is doing with their shader compilation ahead of time. And this is one of the things that I think is going to be huge for things like Project Helix and of course the Steam Machine, because the Steam Machine, they're going to compile shaders ahead of time, just like the Steam Deck does. But now so will Project Helix. So if you end up picking up Project Helix, and that's your new Xbox system, and you're playing your games on there, that will have advanced shaders compiled ahead of time for the exact hardware that you're running on. And then you can just download those shaders when you start the game, and then they don't have to be compiled while you're playing. I think this is huge, and I'm very excited for it. If we scroll down further, it says, after the shader deliver feature was revealed last year, a month later, Microsoft released the Agility SDK 1.618, bringing the feature out of its preview state with the launch of the aforementioned ROG Xbox Ally X handhelds and the Xbox PC app. Now we're finally seeing the feature rolled out to Unreal Engine 5, and hopefully developers will really be able to take advantage of the feature in the war against shader stuttering. And yes, 100%. The more developers that can use this, the better. And if it's being picked up by like UE5, which is an incredibly popular engine, I think everybody is going to benefit from this experience, which means what Valve did with the Steam Deck is going to help everybody who runs Windows only, which is awesome. And then just to round out our last Microsoft story for the day, we've got this post from Asha Sharma. She's the new president, or I can't remember if it's president or CEO. She's in charge of Xbox, okay? She's in charge of Xbox, and she said, for years, Xbox and Discord have worked together to make it easier for players to connect, chat, and play across devices. We're teaming up again as we continue to make Game Pass more flexible for our players. Some of you might start to see some code in the wild, and we will share more details with you soon. I think this could be a couple of things. Number one, I think that they're going to try and roll Discord Nitro nonsense, like those perks that you get with Discord Nitro, into Game Pass, which if it doesn't raise the cost, I don't care. But I don't want the cost going up. We just had the cost go down, you know? I like that I'm less interested in. The other thing that I think it could be that we are finally going to get in Xbox mode on Windows, which I've been using, the ability to connect that with Discord. I mean, yeah, you can run Discord on there, but then you have to use a mouse and keyboard in order to interact with Discord's user interface. If the Project Helix is supposed to be a PC that has an Xbox console interface, well, you don't ever want to have to pick up a mouse and keyboard. And Discord is like this huge thing that everybody seems to use in gaming if they're doing any kind of voice chat, right? So what if this is to basically build in Discord lobbies into the Xbox game mode user interface of Project Helix? That's what I think that they're going to do. And I think that that's a great move. And honestly, no notes if that's what this is. And for PlayStation news, we've got PlayStation is about to lock communication behind age gating. Basically, if you have not verified your age with PlayStation, moving forward, you are going to have to not be able to talk to people through PlayStation. Here's what it says. It says the initiative comes from a goal of providing a safe, age-appropriate experiences for players and families while respecting their privacy and providing meaningful control over gaming experiences. The age verification process will be implemented globally, so even if you are not in a country where that requires this age verification, you're going to be affected by it. And players will need to verify their age to continue using PlayStation communication services such as messages and voice chat. Okay, I think this is absolutely terrible. And the reason I think this is absolutely terrible is I don't trust Sony to not get hacked and have my personal information leaked. I also don't trust all of these third-party companies that big companies are partnering with to get this age verification stuff right. I believe that there's currently legislation going through the California House or Senate, I can't remember which one, that is doing basically the same thing, requiring age verification of all operating systems, which, again, I don't want that. I don't want my operating system having personally identifiable information for me in order to use it, because not because I'm up to no good and I don't want anybody to catch me, but I don't trust these companies to keep my information safe. PlayStation has famously been hacked over and over and over. It's clear that they are not the safest place to have your personally identifiable information. So this is really bad news, I think, for everybody, because if PlayStation's doing this, I guarantee Nintendo's going to do it. I'm sure the Xbox is going to do it. And that'll just leave us to play games on Linux, which is great. That's my main way that I play games, is on Linux. But it's only a matter of time before somebody tries to force Linux to do that. And the way that Linux works doesn't really support this kind of blanket rule. So I don't know what's going to happen, but this is one of those times where the people who are making the laws don't understand technology. And because they don't understand technology, they're making the wrong laws, or they're making them in the wrong way. Anyway, what do you guys think about this? Let me know in the comment section down below that like button. And if it's your first time here in the Nerd Nest, please subscribe. From the Nerd Nest, I'm Bill. Thanks for watching. Stay rad, and I'll see you on the next one.